Hi, this is a continuation. This next story in the novel I wrote is called The Flash Drive. Okay. The still-shaken Daniel Kabashi drove his big rig down this dark, snowy highway, not of his choosing, in an effort to avoid what looked like more terror awaiting him in his life. He survived what seemed to be a highway robbery, what seemed to be a highway robbery, but knew it was far more serious than that. Looking up into what was left of his driver's side mirror, he scanned the blackness behind him to see if he was still being pursued. No sigh of relief came to him, even though the bullet-ridden mirror showed nothing but darkness. Wow, they almost got me that time, he muttered with his wide, frightened Asian eyes. Daniel turned the dial on his Culbra CB and scanned to see if there was any talk of the action that took place an hour ago. As he scanned, he noticed that he was starting to lose traction as he was going up a hill on Nevada's Highway 6, the bleakest, most desolate stretch of road he had ever encountered as a still somewhat new trucker. I wonder if there will be any cops to pull me over for having a headlight crushed out, he wondered. Thoughts followed of what kind of job he might try to get when being fired from trucking for having too many truck dents on his record. Going back to teaching is now out of the question, he said out loud. As the truck got closer to the summit, Daniel noticed that there were tracks of a car ahead of him. Tracks that were nearly level with the snow, but still visible. Yeah, tracks that were nearly leveled with snow, but still visible. The more he climbed the hill, the more he noticed that the tracks ahead of him zigzagged about. Being that they being that he didn't have chains on, he noticed that his truck was starting to play that game a little also. When Daniel reached the top of the hill, he put on the Peterbilt. He put the Peterbilt in second gear and started slowly going down the hill with his foot completely away from the brakes. From the brake. As he looked down the hill, he saw what seemed to be a car on the side of the road. On closer inspection, Daniel saw that it was up against a boulder. He wanted to stop and see if he could help who might be trapped inside, but he'd have to put on the brakes, and in doing so, lose control, possibly ending up down in what looked like might be a ravine. As he slowly passed the car, he noticed the prettiest eyes looking up at him. A blonde girl, about 20, maybe even younger, was looking like she needed help. Although Daniel doubted he could be seen, being that he being that she was possibly blinded by the rig's lights, he knew she was going to be feeling bad as he would have to keep on moving to keep from skidding. When Daniel found the road level enough to safely apply the brakes, he put on a big black hairy coat and gloves, then ran as fast as he could to see if he could help the cute young damsel in distress. When Daniel got to the car, he noticed the girl had her back to him. He didn't know if knocking would frighten her, so he kind of pawed at the window with his gloves. The pawing was far more frightening, and she quickly turned about, pointing a gun at him before lunging at the door and locking it. Daniel's figure crouched down a bit, where he flashed his smile of friendliness to her. "Hello," he waved. He then shouted to the rolled-up window, Do you want me to get help?" The girl shouted, I've got a gun pointed at you. She got a better look at Daniel, who, to her, seemed to be in his late 20s, but due to the darkness could have been older. Daniel didn't seem afraid of the gun. Instead, he just shouted, Good, a pretty girl like you in this day and age probably needs one. But again, do you want me to see if I can get help for you? After what seemed to be a while of thinking about it, the girl still kept the gun pointed at Daniel before rolling down the window a bit. Can you? She asked in a voice that was pleasant to Daniel's ears. Why, hello, smiled Daniel before adding, Phone service doesn't work out here, and we are so out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, and we are so out in the middle of nowhere. Well, I don't think my CB will reach anyone at all. However, I do have a Qualcomm and can. I do have Qualcomm and can get my company to call 911 for you. Help should arrive in, Gad, a couple of hours. You might need me to get to you a few blankets out of my rig. I'll give them to you for free. They need washing, but they should keep you alive until help arrives, until help comes. The girl looked as though she was in deep thought. She then said, How come you didn't stop but kept on going? Daniel laughed and said, I noticed that I was starting to lose traction on the way up. I thought it might be worse on the way down. When I saw that a car, your car, had slid out of control, there was no way in hell I was going to put on the brakes and possibly crush you up against this boulder you hit. I hated to pass you up like that, like I didn't care, but we'd now be in the same situation if I applied those brakes. By the way, if it makes you feel comfortable to keep that gun pointed at me, then keep it on me. But I'm pretty harmless. Well, to most people I am. There's a serial killer around here who is supposed to be a trucker, said the girl with concern. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that. Well, again, if it makes you feel safe, then continue to point it at me. But if you start getting shivery, please point it at the ground. By the way, you look like you're freezing. It's not warm, said the girl with chattering teeth. Chattery teeth. I'll go back to my rig and get those blankets. I'll then contact my company to see if they can get to you a tow. Man, I hope you have money for that. The girl looked like she was in deep thought again. She then said, Can you drive me to a shop? Daniel thought, then said, I hate to say this, but I'm new to this road. Normally I wouldn't be caught dead on a highway like this, especially at this time. But certain things came up, and I don't know where a stop is located. How about if I take you to the nearest town on my way to my drop-off? The town certainly should have a tow truck. Do you have AAA? The girl seemed to be realizing Daniel probably wasn't a monster. Is it true that guns aren't allowed on rigs? She asked. The trucker nodded for yes and said, They aren't allowed anywhere, thanks to the executive order passed a month ago. As a matter of fact, if the DOT found a gun on my rig, I'd not only be fired on the spot by my company, but I'd be arrested as well. But guess who has guns on his rig? You're armed? Asked the girl with wide eyes. I'm not now, but I have some guns on my rig. For what? You wouldn't be talking to me, right? You wouldn't be talking to me now if I didn't have them a couple of hours ago. The girl raised her gun and pointed at him again. The smiling Daniel said, It's a long story. I guess you have to decide whether or not you want to ride with me or sit it out here and hope I call some help. True? The girl didn't say anything. Daniel became more serious and said, Well, I'll get back to my truck, get on the ancient Qualcomm to get some help, and get you some blankets. But I'll need your name. My name is Daniel Kabashi. He extended his hand. The girl paused with the gun pointed at him. She shook Daniel's hand and said, "Sally Woods." Daniel turned and started walking back to his rig. As he walked back to his rig, he heard in the darkness footsteps. I need to see that you aren't getting those guns instead of doing your Qualcomm thing. You're doing your Qualcomm thing to get help," said the girl called Sally Woods. "Fine," said Daniel. A few minutes later, Sally heard the rumble of an idling rig. She followed Daniel around a bend, and there, before her eyes, on the road, was Daniel's rig. Daniel climbed up onto the Peterbilt, kicked off the snow, and climbed on into the cab. He picked up the Qualcomm and started doing things on it called macros. The heat coming out of the cab, coming down onto Sally, felt like heaven, even though it reeked strongly of old cigarettes and coffee. She didn't realize just how cold she was until standing in the doorway next to Daniel in the driver's seat. As he started pressing buttons away on the Qualcomm, Sally could see that he really was trying to get help for her. She dropped the gun to her side and suddenly stopped his hand, saying, "I trust you." "I'm almost done," said Daniel. Sally looked sad and said, "If you help me, I'll be seeing my boyfriend, well, roommate again. Just get me out of here." Daniel smiled and said, "My company will fire me if I give anyone a free ride. Of course, they will fire me if they find out what I've done, that I've got guns." Do they have to know?" asked Sally. Daniel looked like he had a lot in his mind and said, "Things are very strange now. Truly, I don't care if they fire me for helping you out, or you'd probably freeze if I didn't. But again, things are getting weirder than the usual." Daniel looked at the snow building up on the truck's wipers, then said, "No, they don't have to know. Well, I've never had anyone ride with me before who wasn't a relative to me or a trainer. How far out of here do you want me to take you? I have a headlight out, and it will have to be replaced ASAP, or police could not only stop me, but do a search and find guns and a lot lizard with me." "Lot lizard?" Sally asked, as if taken back. "Believe me, you don't look like a lot lizard at all, but it will." Oh god, stop it here.